Good morning. Hello, I'm Dr. Meena from Klang GH. I'm a general psychiatrist. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to give a talk for this session. My topic today, the title will be Smoking and Mental Illness. So I think, yeah, it's a very common topic, but not much talked or discussed on. All right, first, uh, let's talk a little bit about the definition of mental illness. So, what is mental illness about? Mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these. Mental illnesses are associated with distress and or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. So, a mental illness is a condition that arises when there is a gradual impairment of socio-occupational functioning. So, the types of common mental illnesses that are known to us are the most common would be schizophrenia, bipolar mood disorder, major depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, and substance use disorders. So I'll be going a little bit and giving a little bit of brief introductions on these each types of mental illness presentations. So let's talk a little bit about schizophrenia. So what is schizophrenia? It is a condition which affects thinking, feeling, and behavior and causes people to have abnormal experiences. So what are the symptoms of schizophrenia? The common symptoms that are presented here, for example, is hallucinations, which is hearing, smelling, feeling, or seeing something that isn't there. So most of us would have this notion that hallucinations are only about hearing, but it is more. We have different modalities of hallucination based on our various sensory modalities. Second would be delusions, which is believing something strongly despite irrational logical explanation given. Now, this is a bit difficult to explain, but it's basically about an individual holding strongly to something they believe, which in general it is of irrational context. And despite giving logical explanation, they still believe that this thought is there. Third would be disorganized speech and behavior. What do you mean by disorganized speech and behavior? Example, disorganized speech is you basically would not be able to understand what the person is talking about. You can't make the head or the tail. And behavior is very disorganized behavior, like maybe walking around without clothes on, or, peeling off the paint, or, talking to the lock, talking to the windows. Very disorganized behavior. And the last would be difficulty in thinking, which is you find it hard to concentrate. You find it hard to, focus. Your thoughts will be disorganized all over the place. Okay, a little bit about bipolar mood disorder. Now, can you see the little picture on your right on the top? Can you see like two spots and a smiley face? So if you look on both angles, one will look like a sad face with a frown. And if you see on the right hand side, it'll be like a smiley face with a smile going up. So it actually displays two bipolars, the two poles of your emotions, the extreme happiness and the extreme sadness. So what is bipolar? Bipolar is a period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood lasting at least 1 week and presence of at least three of the following criteria, which is you could have inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, decreased need of sleep, increased talkativeness, pride of ideas, very distractible, increase in goal-directed activity, and excessive involvement in activities with negative consequences. All right, so basically, you will be like in a manic phase where you'll be very talkative, very familiar, very high sexual drives, over familiar, spending a lot of money, talkative. There is no need for sleep, just 2-3 hours of sleep is sufficient for you. So that, is very highly suggestive of a bipolar disorder. Depression. Now, depression is very common to us. So everyone has times in their lives when they feel down or depressed. It is usually for a good reason, does not dominate your life, and does not last for a long time. However, if the depression goes on for weeks, prolonged to months, or becomes very bad, you may find yourself stuck and unable to lift yourself up. It can start to affect every area of your life, and this is when you may need to get help. So, in difficult times, for example, now that we've gone through this COVID era, and so there's a loss of job, and then there's a lot of economic problem going on. So you can have your lows, but once if it prolongs and starts to affect your social and occupational functioning, and you're always low, then you should suspect if depression has come in. Yeah. So the symptoms of depression are low mood, sadness, loss of interest, poor sleep, reduce of appetite, having difficulty to concentrate, feeling like crying, having crying spells, feeling of hopelessness, feeling of worthlessness, suicidal thoughts and attempts. So if you have or are able to identify one or two of these symptoms, so please do come forward for help. Yeah. A few words on anxiety disorders. So the term anxiety disorder refers to a specific psychiatric disorders that involves extreme fear or worry, and include generalized anxiety disorder, panic attacks, agoraphobia, social anxiety disorder, selective mutism, separation anxiety, specific phobias. I know it's a little bit difficult to get all in, but these are just a group of anxiety disorders that comes under the spectrum of anxiety disorder. I'm speaking a little bit on GAD. Now, GAD and panic attacks, these are the most common types of anxiety disorders presented to us, right? Compared to maybe the social phobias or others. So, what is general anxiety disorder? It is actually a condition that causes feelings of intense anxiety, worry, or nervousness about everyday life. You're basically worrying about your children, you're basically worrying about your daily activities. It's just a total life full of worrying. You just worry. So people with GAD struggle to control these feelings, and the condition tends to interfere with daily activities and personal relationships. The last would be substance use disorder. So what is substance use disorder? It's taking the substance, for example, the most common types of substance abuse that we come across is consumption of amphetamines, methamphetamines, cannabis. So taking the substance which is most common to us is amphetamines, methamphetamines, cannabis, alcohol, nicotine, and others in larger amounts or for longer than you are meant to. Wanting to cut down or stop using the substance but not managing to. Spending a lot of time getting, using, and recovering from the use of the substance. So this is what substance use disorder is all about. So basically your life is just revolved around how you want to get the substance, how you want to use the substance, and how your life is basically consumed by these illicit substance. Yeah. All right. And this is constant use will eventually cause very severe socio-occupational functioning impairment in your life. Okay, so now we'll be talking about smoking and mental illness. Right. It has long been known that smoking is more common among people with mental health conditions. However, it has been unclear whether smoking could be a factor in causing such problems or is simply a form of self-medication among those already living with poor mental health. It's a gray area there. Scientists say they have now unpicked the issue. So what they say is what we found was that there was evidence of causal effects in both directions. So both sides, smoking, tobacco, cigarettes could increase the risk of mental health problems such as depression and schizophrenia, which research suggests. It has long been known that smoking is more common among people with mental health conditions. Why? Why? The most common self-reported reasons for smoking are stress relief and enjoyment, with around half of smokers reporting these smoking motives. Right? So basically, when people smoke, they have this notion that it helps relieve stress. It helps them to be able to focus and get on with their daily lives. It sort of gives them that short-lived enjoyment, relaxation. All right, and for some, It is believed that by smoking, your weight is controlled, aiding in concentration and socializing, uh, and also quite commonly cited, right? Smoking for supposed stress relief, improved concentration, weight control, or other functions has not been found to be related to attempts to stop or success of attempts to stop, right? So when the belief is strong, the motivation to stop the smoking is very low because they believe that smoking can help and aid them in these areas of their lives. Now, nicotine may help alleviate some of the positive and negative symptoms associated with psychiatric illnesses and may also help to alleviate the side effects associated with their medications. Attempts to stop smoking do not appear to exacerbate psychotic symptoms, right? So, some of these group of patients believe that by smoking, the symptoms are reduced. They feel more relaxed, more light, less burdened, and there's also a belief that by smoking, the side effects of antipsychotics will be decreased. Why do people with mental health problems smoke more? So some of these hypotheses are discussed in more detail below. Association of cigarette smoking and mental health problems with deprivation. So the cigarette smoking has become increasingly concentrated in the most deprived groups. So who are these people in the deprived groups? Taking into account occupation, educational level, housing, unemployment, and living in crowded accommodations. So it is believed that research has proved that these group of people are more susceptible to increased amount of smoking. The relationship between smoking and the environment. The rates of smoking observed among people living in institutions were considerably higher than for those with similar illnesses living at home. The highest rates were observed for those homeless. Does the illness cause smoking? Nicotine use as self-medication. Self-medication view is consistent with several hypotheses about the effects of nicotine, that it helps to alleviate some of the positive and negative symptoms of mental health problems, that it improves cognition or our thinking processes, that it may also help to alleviate or remove the side effects associated with antipsychotic medications. So with these effects that so-called nicotine is providing, some of these individuals with mental health illness believes that, you can actually just smoke and self-treat yourself, which is a totally untrue belief. So, have you ever wondered why do we want to smoke more? So, what is happening in our brain? So, if you can see the picture here, we're talking about a dopamine reward pathway. And the pathway you can see is dotted in the purple, right? So, right. So, this is how the nicotine enters the brain, stimulates the nicotine receptors in our brain, and the dopamine reward pathway is activated. So what is dopamine reward pathway? So the mesolimbic pathway is sometimes referred to as the reward pathway. It is a dopaminergic pathway in the brain. So we know our brains comprise a lot of neurotransmitters, a lot of pathways. It's a little bit of a complex thing going on. So the release of dopamines, which is one of the main neurotransmitters or chemical substance which is released by our brains. So the release of dopamines in this pathway regulates motivation and desire for rewarding stimuli. So when you smoke more, the mesolimbic pathway is activated in your brain. So by activation of this pathway, more dopamines are released, giving you that happy, elated, desired effect. And it plays a role in the perception of pleasure. And indirectly, people wanting to smoke more. So the dysregulation of these mesolimbic pathway, the abuse, may play an important role in the development and maintenance of an addiction. So as you smoke every day, you smoke more, and this pathway is activated commonly. Eventually, because of the repeated pleasure, the short-term pleasure that you receive, eventually you want that pleasure, you want that feeling, and you'll end up smoking more to regain that feeling, and eventually it is interpreted as addiction. In smoking, nicotine stimulates these dopamine receptors and eventually altering the brain condition that requires continuous presence of nicotine higher than in the general population, and there is a strong association between smoking and mental health conditions. This association becomes stronger relative to the severity of the mental health condition, with the highest levels of smoking found in psychiatric inpatients. All right? Nicotine dependence is the most prevalent, deadly, and yet most treatable of all psychiatric disorders, but is often overlooked, right? So we're talking about methamphetamines, we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about alcohol, but sometimes smoking is overlooked. So smoking prevalence is significantly higher among people with mental health problems than compared to the general population. Smoking prevalence is highest among those with a diagnosis of a psychotic disorder. Studies have shown smoking rates to be as high as up to 80% among patients with schizophrenia, and people with psychotic disorders who live in institutions are particularly vulnerable. For example, 70% of this group smoke, including where 52% of them are considered as heavy smokers. Daily cigarette consumption is considerably higher among smokers with mental health problems. Okay, you can see this small graph that I've given here. So basically, you can see the ones colored in red. So you can see schizophrenia, depression, bipolar, PTSD. So basically, you see the numbers going up high with relation to smoking. So the prevalence is always higher. The percentage is always higher for patients with mental illness in relation to smoking. So, smoking is the largest avoidable cause of premature death and health inequality in those with mental disorders who die 10 to 20 years earlier than the general population. Adults with mental disorders disproportionately experience tobacco related harm. With appropriate support, people with mental disorder are able to stop smoking. So, smoking cessation improves mental and physical health even in the short term and reduce risk of premature death. So, smoking is related to all sorts of complications leading to heart ailments and eventually premature death. So, if you're able to capture these group of people and try to introduce smoking cessation techniques, options, we can actually help to improve the quality of their life, even at least a small amount. Yeah. So there remains a culture of acceptability within mental health providers. There are no national reporting systems on stopping smoking and mental health. So, what are the myths that people believe? So, some say stopping smoking has adverse effects on mental health. Mental health service users have other priorities. Mental health services users don't want to stop smoking. Mental health services users can't stop smoking. So, these are all the myths that sometimes go about, right? That prevents a person to motivate himself to stop smoking. And these are the challenges that we face every day. So, what are the harm reduction ways? So, stopping smoking main recommendation, yeah, effectiveness and cost effectiveness of harm reduction. For smokers not ready, unable to quit in one stop, you can give behavior support. You can refer to a specialist service. For patients who smoke more or a person who smokes more, you can give higher doses and longer terms of NRT. All right. What is NRT? It is a nicotine replacement therapy. So once you're able to identify a smoker, right, and you talk to them, and then you tell them about the risks, and then you tell them about the options that are provided in the healthcare facilities. So most of these smokers are ignorant about the services that are provided in our healthcare. So if you're able to capture this group and you tell them, look, are you motivated? Do you want to stop smoking? And we have ways we can help you, and we can give you the options. You choose what way you want to stop. So once they are aware of the availability of the options, then they may be motivated to want to maybe not stop, but to reduce. That is actually a very good positive step. You don't want to say stop immediately because they've been smoking for years. The addiction, the reward pathways have already been ingrained in them. So you can introduce them to actually, reduce the smoking, maybe about one box to maybe half a box a day. Then eventually and gradually, you will want them to succeed in total smoking cessations. So we follow the biopsychosocial model, right? In psychiatry, we follow this as a management to help patients. In other disciplines, for example, in medical, in surgical, they basically focus on the biological aspect. That means you have an illness, a condition, we give you medication, we treat you, you heal, you're well. But in psychiatry, we have two other spectrums, which includes the psychological spectrum and the social spectrum, which plays a very important part in helping to support the biological aspect of treatment. This is the general model of a biopsychosocial diagram. To use a biopsychosocial model means to satisfy the multi-causal, multifactorial, and multidimensional aspect of human health-related behaviors like smoking. To neglect one of those biopsychosocial factors would mean to miss the opportunity to most effectively treat a psychosocial model for nicotine dependence. All right, nicotine dependence. So you can see the biological aspect. You have the physical addiction, the withdrawal symptoms that you experience, and the reward. How about the psychological aspect? Paired activeness, routines, habits, triggers, when you see a picture of somebody smoking or the smell of smoking, stress management, coping with emotions. Some people smoke to be as a stress reliever. How about the social part? Connection, fitting, social acceptance, peer acceptance, cultural norms. So nicotine is comparable to other drugs like heroin or cocaine in its addictive potential. Success increases when there is a plan developed ahead of time that combines NRT or medication, cognitive behavioral strategies, and counseling support. So, the biological management. Consider nicotine replacement therapy options such as the patch, gum, lozenges, and by prescription, the inhaler and nasal spray. You also have maybe bupropion, or known as Zyban or Wellbutrin, which helps reduce cravings. You have varenicline, known as Chantix or Champix. It's a prescriptive drug which blocks nicotine absorption in the brain. And if NRT or other treatment is not an option, learn cognitive behavioral techniques to manage symptoms. So let's talk a little bit of varenicline. The trade name for varenicline is Chantix or Champix. It is a prescription medication used in treating nicotine addiction. It helps in reducing craving and decreases the pleasure effects of cigarettes and other tobacco products. Okay. See the pictures? Okay, these are the few options that we have. You have Nicorette, which is a nicotine gum. We also have the second picture, a nicotine patch, right? We have nicotine inhalers. We have the spray form, and we have the lozenges where you can suck on, right? So the psychological management. First of all, you identify triggers such as people smoking, places where people smoke, things that remind you about smoking, the ashtray, the lighter, right, and paired activities, and develop cognitive and behavioral coping strategies for how to manage the situation. So that means change your thinking. Smoking is not an option. All right. So when you want to smoke, think that what are the negative effects that you can get? How is it going to affect your health? How is it going to affect your quality of life? How are you going to try to avoid yourself? Avoid areas that remind you about smoking. Don't go to areas where people smoke. Don't have things in the house that reminds you that, of smoking, like ashtray or the lighter or the cigarette box. And think about something positive. Try to have a positive mindset. You can change your behavior. For example, maybe you can go into reading, exercise, other positive activities. Try to not to try to remove your focus from the negative aspect to the positive aspect. Try not to think and avoid about smoking. So change in behavior. So for example, coffee is a trigger for somebody. So instead, drink water. Right? So that's an example. Learn and practice new stress management. If you think that by smoking is going to help you to alleviate your stresses, maybe you can try other options that may help you with your stresses, maybe reading a book or having an exercise or spending some time with your family, right? The social management. Okay. Develop coping strategies for social triggers. Develop social supports for non-smoking lifestyle. Assess counseling. If you need counseling, if you need professional help, so help is always available, right? Chase, you just have to reach out when you're ready to accept it and ready to be committed. Okay, my last slide, yeah? So this is a summary. So why change smoking habits? People with a mental illness can and do quit smoking for a number of very good reasons. So diseases caused by smoking are the second largest killer of people who have a mental illness. People who change their smoking habits get a real boost in their confidence and feel a great sense of achievement. So quitting improves people's appearance and hygiene. People who quit smoking may have more money to spend on enjoyable things, things like going to the movies, as well as essentials like paying the rent, buying food, spending time with your family. People who quit smoking may only need a lower dose of antipsychotic medications, right? Because when you smoke more, it affects your drug metabolism. So you have a lot of benefits here when you try to actually stop or reduce smoking. All right, any questions? Okay, Alex. Do government hospitals and clinics? All right. Hi, Alex. I got your question. Do government hospitals and clinics provide smoking cessation programs? What is the charge like to join one? All right. Okay. Yes, Alex, government hospitals and clinics do provide smoking cessation. We have a stop smoking clinic in our programs, and basically it's free of charge. So what you can do is you can maybe get a referral letter from any GP, and then you can bring the letter, or you can actually just walk into our stop smoking clinics. Just ask any of the staffs at the any of the hospitals and say, do you have a stop smoking clinic? And if they say yes, just go to the clinics, introduce yourself, and get an appointment, and it's usually free of charge. All right. Any other questions? So if you know any of your friends, relatives, brothers, fathers, or patients, or anybody that has issues you think who smokes excessively, we can try to help them. The stop smoking clinic is available in our government sector. Please do use our services, and we will be happy to help you. Basically because we want everyone to have a good quality of life. All right. Thank you very much. All the best and good luck. Take care. Bye. Good.